So thank you, everyone. This will be a 40 minutes lecture, then a Q&A. This is my very first lecture in English. I usually object to the fact of lecturing in English because I am French and I want people to work in their own native language. But I like Serbia. I have actually a game design prize I gained in Belgrade. So I am very pleased to talk about you about my one of my expertise field, which is branching narrative. I've been told that some of you are not professionals of the video game industry. So I will. It is not a only video game lecture. You can use whatever I will tell you today in many fields that are linked to the non-linear narration, non-linear narrative, non-linear writing. So we will split the literature or writing works into two fields: the linear works and the non-linear works. When it is linear, it's about movies, it's about novels, it's about TV series. Most of the production until the 21st century has been linear works, which means that even though there are sometimes flashback or sometimes puzzling narration, you are supposed to read a book from the first sentence to the last sentence in a certain order. When with modern productions such as video gaming or role-playing games, or sometimes interactive movies such we have in Netflix, we must use non-linear non-linear writing science that is very young. So everything I will tell you today has no more than 40 years, and if you want to find a new way of working, you are free to discover. This is an open field. It is not related only to video games, in a sense that I have stopped working in the video game industry 2 years ago, and now I am in the full audiovisual movie and TV serial industry, and I am working with non-linear scripts. So this is not a video game only related field, even though video game industry is the industry where you earn the most money. So I will strongly encourage you to try this industry and see if you can work in it. So I will share my screen and show you. I will show you. Yes, here we go. So branching in interactive fiction. Branching in interactive fiction means I will tell you what it is, but this is the very basic of interactive fiction. That means non-linear works. Even though I will extensively introduce you to the concept of branching narrative, this is not the only way to do interactive writing. As the this is not the only way. And in one of the exercises I will give you at the end of the lecture, you will see you will have a strong example of something that is not based on branching narrative, but you have to know the science of branching narrative in order to go further steps. So what is branching narrative? Branching narrative, this is the basic situation where you are in a room, in a video game or in a role-playing game or in interactive piece, and you can exit on the right door or the front or the left door. If you take the left door, you will have some adventure occurring. If you go to the right door, you will have some other adventure occurring. But if the player or the reader just have a single run of your video game or single watch of your interactive piece, and if you take the left door, what you have written behind the right door won't be used ever by this reader player. This is something peculiar because that means that you will have invested money and time to something that will be not used at the end of the production, but that will be in the final piece. And the managing of this time and this money is something that we will use today. we try to understand today. So before going further into branching narrative diagrams, I have an example there showing that everyone is already familiar with some example of branching narrative. If you wake up in the morning and tell yourself, okay, if I have received this mail today, I will do that, either I will do that, you are already thinking in a branching narrative. And if you do some basic programming, you see there that if, then, else, do, until, while are already branching narrative trees that are used in the when you do a certain type of interactive fiction programming or writing. So one of the goal of this lecture will be to link this visual diagram to your work of interactive piece or future work. So yes, I say that you have to know your chess openings, meaning that if you are a good chess player, you don't think or overthink your first moves. You already know them because you know them by heart. And if your opponent does a logical response to what you did on the first step of your chess game, you already know what you can do in the first three moves of your chess game. When it comes to video game design and narrative design, and especially branching design, you have to know your chess openings by heart because there is not many moves to know. And if you know them, you know you have half of the work that is already done. And what I say is you have what I will tell you in this lecture, that you have two ways of writing interactive pieces. One is trying to make something good and interactive. Another way is to take a visual diagram of what could be your interactive fiction, then put your story into this diagram, which is something not intuitive. So the first advice I will tell you is please try to not write a lot. Write the few words as possible. Why? Because what matters in interactive fiction is the word interactive, not fiction. And if you don't write much, you will be read. If you have a big video game with a lot of words, most of the time you won't be read. And if you player wanted to read a book, there are a million books better than what you wrote, so they will read the book actually and not play a video game. And this is a strong matter. It has an impact on localization. You have a question maybe?
Yeah, sorry for the interruption. We will just ask you if you could press the full screen in your PowerPoint. Yeah, okay. So that people can see it even bigger.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So yes, localization. I don't know if you write in Serbian, which I will strongly advise you to do. But you can actually write directly in English if you are fluent in English. I personally write in French. Then you have to localize your game. It's about 10 cents a word. The biggest market today is China. Even though I do not work anymore in the video game industry, I still have royalties on my previous game, and I make today 51% of my royalties on China. So you have to localize in China and in English. These are the main market, but Portuguese is a good market. Turkish is a good emerging market. French is an average market. German is not a good market because they pretty all speak English. So if you speak English, we'll sell in Germany. So this is a whole lecture on its own. But what I want to tell is, if you make a regular 50,000 word game, it will cost you 5,000 euro or dollars if you want to sell it in China, for instance. Making $500 in China is rather easy. if you make like Disco Elysium a 1 million words game, it will cost you 100,000 euro or dollar to translate your game. This is a huge sum. Your game won't be ever in Italian or in Portuguese or even in French. So don't make the mistake to think, oh, the more word I have, the more value my game will have, and the more sales I will do. On the contrary, don't go further than 50,000 words for a first game, and try to manage the words you have with the cost of the localization. And I have another comparison to make. On the last line of this PowerPoint, I say I oppose Disney to Dark Souls. Disney works in strong IP, and there is a extended lore in all the IP, so we know everything about every character in the Disney franchise. On the contrary, if you have a game like Dark Souls, even though they master their IP or their license, they do not tell everything to the player. By not telling everything to the player invests himself or herself into the game, and they try to fix the hole with their own imagination, though they own the game in an imaginative sense, and the game has a stronger experience. So the Dark Souls is a great way to exploit a license. And this is the heart of the lecture today. Please know your classics in every sense in every sense possible. So before going to the diagram, just a word about classics. You have the chance to live in Europe. I have the chance to live in France. France gives a lot of money, invest in a lot of money in the video game industry. So I can ask for just for writing a game design document for 10,000 euro as a compensation, without any obligation to code the game at the end. But Europe can finance your game too, and this is a standard application for subsidiaries. I don't know what to say when you have free grants of money, but anyway, you got the point. And but if you want if you want your game to be accepted and funded this way, you have to make a game that talks about Europe or Serbia, which is in Europe, about your legend, your myth, your stories, even your own stories. Okay, don't talk about I don't know, Marvel Adventure or another Lovecraft thing. Lovecraft, which is an American writer. Talk about what is your country and what is your life, and you will have better chance to have your application accepted. So I strongly advise all my students to always focus on the French patrimonial assets when they have to fill a file for funding. So we are now talking about the branching narrative trees. So when you make a branching narrative tree, or you read one, usually you begin by the top and you end by the bottom. So the S means start and the E means end. And as you can see, I don't know if you see my cursor, you begin with the start, then you have a vertical line, you have a branching point where I can go to the left door or the right door, then you have a branching converging to a point, then you have the ending. And you have on the left side a branching that goes to a game over. This is a very, very simplistic version of the game. A branching narrative for a full game is very complex, but this is a simple design just to make my point clear. The points just before the vertical branching that goes to the ending is a mandatory point. I call that a choke point, but you can tell we will call that a mandatory point. There is no unified vocabulary in the game design industry, and I would like that there are some there will be some more European and non-English and maybe French term into the branching narrative science. But anyway, one of these mandatory points, the mandatory point just before the ending, I put a $sign. Why? Because a mandatory point means that if you play this game and you want to get to the ending, you will go through these mandatory points. And since you will go through these mandatory points, you will invest more time and more money in what you will tell into these mandatory points. On the contrary, when you have a branching narrative on the side that goes to a game over, most of the time player will make a mistake and go to the game over once, but not twice. So since this is something that will be likely less used, you will invest less time and less money in this. On the left bottom side, I put a picture of Ian Livingstone, that the founder of Games Workshop license, president of Eidos that make Tomb Raider, and the writer of the Wizard of the Firetop Mountain, one of the first game book, and fighting fantasy game book. And this guy designed the same way the deaths in the Wizard of the Firetop Mountain game book and in the Tomb Raider, meaning that the deaths were very short paragraph of maybe 3 lines, quite gory actually, because there were a lot of blood that had a lot of impact on the player, but it didn't invest too many lines and too many time into writing the game over. This is the same thing in the modern Tomb Raider games. When you have when Lara Croft died, you have a gory short sequence that has a lot of impact on the player, but that lasts 2 seconds. This is so meaning that if you have already your branching tree diagram, you already know where to put the money of your games. When you have a mandatory point, this is the ideal point to make a break into rhythm. That means that if you were into an action sequence and you go through a mandatory point, this is the time to switch maybe to some exploration sequence, detective sequence, dialogue sequence, or anything. And you can then mandatory point to mandatory point, and with different diagram between the mandatory point, alternate sequence, put a granularity into your narrations, so you can master actually what you are delivering to your reader or players. The mandatory points, since this is a mandatory point, you can do many things. Actually, everything that is important go through a mandatory point into your branching tree. You can, for example, if you are reading a story or playing a game where your hero has a love relationship with someone, that someone can die at this point, or that someone can break up with the hero at this point, because you won't have to make exception you won't make further in the code if the player has broke up with his girlfriend. Then you don't have to do that, because since the breakup occurred in a mandatory point, we are 100% sure it occurred in this playthrough, so you don't have to make exception. To see, usually the mandatory points are the pivot point of the story, where you can make your characterization construction. For instance, you can make your main character better. You can have a twist, or you can kill someone. This is the good point. So this is something I learned from the creative director of the Arkham franchise. This is something very interesting. He told us that, in the Arkham City, they made this beautiful Gotham City under the snow, and this is beautiful. This is one of the most beautiful landscape in the video game industry. But this is something interesting, because after 1 hour or 2, players actually forget that they are in some kind of marvelous environment, and they just get bored. So what they do is they put Batman regularly, let's say every hour, in a very dull, boring corridor, very with very few features, and it's quite long and quite boring. And at the end of the corridor, Batman opens the door, and we discover again the wonderful city of Gotham. We forgot how wonderful it was, but since we were in the boring corridor, we see the wonder of Gotham City. This is some kind of trick to add granularity, which is a word I will use often in the lecture. And since you are going to a mandatory point where many things will occur, just before, it's good to have some kind of boring, dulling sequence, so reader or player will get the best impact of the change you imagined for the mandatory point. Let's talk about the one true path. The one true path is a kind of diagram that goes from the start to the ending, and the one true path is the diagram where every branching point is a mandatory point, such as in the Crypt of the Sorcerer by Livingstone. That means that if you do a single fail, a single wrong choice, a single wrong choice in your adventure, this is the end of the adventure. Memorize the word one true path because we will use it sometimes. Is a one true path good? This is the paradox. Since if you do a wrong choice, you are dead. This is virtually not an interactive piece of interactive fiction. This is not interactive, but some very good pieces, actually. One of the best game book, which is called Creature from Havoc from Steve Jackson, is actually a one true path, because the more one true path your piece, your work, your video game is, the more you will have control about the story, because you know where the player is or the reader is, since if he is elsewhere, he is dead. But this is the paradox. We don't really know. Actually, this is not a question, because one true path is meant to be a part, fragments of the whole diagram. This is something interesting. I put that on reverse, or starting at the left and finishing at the it is an F because this is French for fin, ending at the right. So this is an anti one true path. That means that every choice in every point in this diagram is a good choice. So if I go this way, it is very tense. I am like diffusing a bomb. If I do a wrong choice, I will die. If I am there, I am in Belgrade in vacation, and whatever I do, everything is good, and I am in holidays and I am enjoying it. So this is two different things. And that means that if you master the characteristic of your branching narrative, even though you don't know the story, even though you don't know the way you write, you can induce into the reader or the player a sense of tension or a sense of relaxation, which is another dimension that we don't have in the regular novel or regular movie industry. So, and you can alternate tensing, relaxing, tension, relaxation. So you have a new tool. But one true path and anti-one true path are not the only structure we can see in video game industry or in the interactive fiction industry. For instance, we have how could I say that? A buckling, a circular diagram where you start to one point, And the ending point is, I call that the great door diagram, because you begin before a great door, and on the outside of the great door, you have the final boss, but you have to go all around the world to have the right items, or to become stronger, to be able to finish this boss. But if you want, the first step you make is through the big door and try to fight the final boss. So this is a circular design, because you begin near the end, you go around the world, then you are at the end, and you can make several trip around the world to begin stronger, and finally maybe someday ending the game. This is something we see in l'ancienne prophétie. I don't know the word in the game book in French, but in English, but it's called the ancienne prophétie. But this is the Groundhog Day, or this is Zelda Breath of the Wild design. This is a strong design choice in video game industry. Very, we can see that in roguelike, modern roguelites. This is another one, the Scorpion Swamp, more linked to exploration in territory. So you have a starting point, and you can freely go from left to right to many regions of the world. And if you go into a specific region, you have a branching tree that can be a one-true pass or an anti-one-true pass, or a mix. And each time you finish the region, you go back to the world hub. So this is another tree you can encounter in video game industry. And this is, I won't tell, but you have very imaginative other structure. This one is very difficult to explain in French, and it is not meaningful, but there can be as many structures as you want. And if you have your own set of structures, you can do many creative works of interactive fiction. So getting started with branching graph, you have two options. If you are an expert, I do that. I have been doing that for 23 years now. So of course, I have a story, and I wrote the interactive story as I wrote nonlinear fiction as easily as I wrote linear fiction, because I have that, I know that. But if you begin, you can try this. You have your story, then you forget your story, then you draw a graph, and you say, okay, let's begin with an action sequence. So if it's an action sequence, it's rather tense. So it begins with a small one true pass, or maybe with one or two alternative. Then we'll have a mandatory points. Then we'll have an anti-one true pass, maybe, because it will be a nice, we will explain everything about the story. Then we'll have a tension, and maybe we'll have a circular design. I don't know. So you can design first your tree, and then if you have your story in mind, you can put your story into the tree you design. And you can do, this is one of the methods. I will show you another method soon. This is one of the methods. You can try an alternative method to have a strong interactive fiction design. This is a very fun, very efficient, if you don't have the time and you have to give something to your client tomorrow. This is something I use. So you can use the geographic method, which means you have to make a game that takes place in Paris, for instance. So I take a map of Paris, and I say, okay, there will be something in Notre Dame, there will be something in the Louvre, there will be something I don't know in the exterior of Paris. Then I link them with link this place with lines, and I have my diagram. That means that the player begins in Notre Dame, he can go to the Louvre or the exterior of Paris, then he can get back because they have some kind. So the geographic method is very strong, and it's very strong if you don't have time and you begin. It's rather weak if you have to deliver the best work of your life, but this is very strong to begin with. So if you are writing in the nonlinear writing industry, you have two powerful tools coming from the linear design industry, which means the dramatic granularity. The dramatic granularity means that you will tell a story when there is tension, but there is cool down, and there is love moment, and there are, I don't know, many things that happens, many events that will excite your reader, then cool down your reader, then excite him more, and so on. You can use the style, because I don't know in Serbian, but in French, when we use short sentences, when we use a lot of comma, when we use the present form of the verbs, then we are in an action. We are designing action phases. If we tell the things and the past tense, we call imperfect tense. This is more a long description, and we have the time. This is more relaxing. So we have the style and the grammatical tools to induce granularity in the structure of the stories. And in the video game industry or role-playing game industry, you have the interactive structured granularity. Thanks to the design of the branching narrative, you can induce to your player, to your readers, you can have other tools to make them feel tension or relaxation or anything. So what I tell you is that I don't know, a boring old TV serial, black and white, that goes very slow is boring, but a lot of action movies are also boring because they give too much all the time. You have to make breaks into your action movies to go back to the action and to experience the action. Same in the horror movies. Horror movies have a lot of humors or jokes, funny moments, because you have to break the horror to get back to the horror. So granularity is the essence. And if I have time, and I have time for that, I will tell you about the metagame. Metagame is something that people talk a lot in the video game industry, because if you are playing a game, an interactive game, and you have the choice between going left, right, it can be a labyrinth of words. You are talking to someone, will you be nice or will you be not nice? Actually, a lot of players go to an abstract vision of the game, and they say, I will go left, then I will go left, then I will go left. And they are making actually two-dimensional representation of your story design into their head. And they are not experiencing the game. They are actually going into a labyrinth, and the immersion is broken. So this is a problem we discuss a lot in the video game industry, because a lot of people are afraid that the game is not immersive anymore. I think personally that this is not a problem, because a metagame is still a game. But is there a way to get out of this labyrinth and confuse, puzzle the player so much into the structure that the player cannot draw this labyrinth into his head, and then must get back to the game, get back to the immersion? Yes, there is a way, and this way is to make multiplayer games. If you have multiplayer games, if you have multiplayer adventure games that will come soon, I have designed one in 5 years ago and will soon be published. If you are dealing with multiplayer game, your choices are not only your choices, but they depend on the random choices of another player. And their choices depend on your decision too. And you have some kind of three-dimensional vision of the interactive branching narrative. And this is so difficult to conceive in the mind that actually people are playing the game and not abstracting it. So this is a way, but it was just a word about it. I have talked a little bit quick, but I am at the end, I think, of my lecture. I will just end with something that maybe the organization of the lecture will give you my mail if you have any question about writing for interactive fiction. And there is something else in that. I don't know how much you are a video game programmer or programmers, but this is another lecture. But actually, branching narrative, as I told in the beginning of the lecture, is only the beginning. There are other ways, such as full object approach of the game, which means that we do not represent the branching the narrative interactive fiction of the game with branch, but rather with distinct objects, and that can interact together. But this is another field and a more advanced field. So if you have questions now, I will be happy to answer you.
Hey, thanks very much. Just a moment. So we have some people here in the room. We also have around 20 people following us online. So I would just ask once more, anyone who's watching us on Zoom, please write your questions in the Q&A section. We don't have
in the meantime, I will maybe explain some of the homework I gave you. So I have 3 questions. If you want, but this is not a homework in the design that you think about. I told you, and you try to have the right answer. Since we are in a creative field, there is no wrong answer, and this is a creative field with very few. There is not a lot of books about it. So I made a game called A Better World, which you can play to the following URL called abw.blue abetterworld.blue. And I just want you to make a game at home. You just play a game. It is a game with where you can change the world history, and just try to imagine how could be the branching narrative of this game. And the answer is this is a game that was built without any branching narrative, but you can still imagine what it could be with if it was a branching narrative, and it is a good exercise. And it shows you too how could exist a game without any branching narrative. So have a try at home. And the other exercise I gave the organization is I gave you a map of the old Belgrade, the capital of the Serbia. And I just wanted you to try to make a short interactive diagram using the geographic method, which means if I was to live an adventure in Belgrade, what would I live, and how would I live in which following which kind of interactive tree. So those questions and the URL and the map of Beograd will be given to you by the organization.
Thanks a lot. Yes, we will send this to them basically on Monday, and then of course we'll let you know how it went. So we have some of the first questions that arrived via Zoom. So there's a couple of people asking you to share some books or other resources that you would recommend, I suppose, in relation to the branching narratives topic.
Okay, as I told you, know your classics. So the strong advice I will give you is to I have some example there. Just sorry. So I have a whole library of these. These are the old choose your own adventure book fighting fantasy. This is the French edition, so I don't know. There is a Serbian edition, and of course there is an English edition. So this is the famous Wizard of the Firetop Mountain. So please know you are adult in the creative industry. Please read them and understand them. Try to understand what they did, and we have a lot of things to learn from all these books, which have a different set of rules, and they have different universe, and they have different. They have a lot of things to know, because some of them, old ones are one true pass, medium ones are not one true pass, and then modern ones are very good one true pass. So you have to you can understand everything about this. There is no good books actually in French about this. In English, I don't know. And of course, you have the in every field in Serbia, but of course in English and in French, you have the interactive fiction community. The interactive fiction community is a community based on textual interactive video games, and they use a programming language called Inform, which is not a branching narrative video programming language, but it is a very strong programming language, and it works in natural language. That means that you don't have to actually work in you don't have to code your game in a specific code. You just have to tell in a natural language thing like the room is called a classroom. In the classroom, you have some chairs. Chairs are thing you can sit on, and they are made of wood. If you tell that to the this is the code source. This is the source code of the video game, which is cool.
Thank you. Then we have another two, and then hopefully some from the room here. So another question is, do you have other examples to benefit from the metagame principle besides the multiplayer?
Actually, no, because I think that some of you have played PlayerUnknown Battleground, PUBG, or Fortnite, and the Royal Battle style of game actually are good game, not because they are exciting, but because they showed that if you have enough multiplayer, you happen to live every second in a video game where there are emergent gameplays or game design situation. That means that you cannot predict what will happen on the battleground, and those kind of things are quite new. Let's say 2 or 3 years, or maybe 4 years, and this had an impact on interactive fiction programming, because we understood that thanks to those battle royale game, we understood that there is no metagame anymore. So if you find a way to avoid the metagame, another way to avoid the metagame, well, it will be a remarkable discovery.
Thank you very much. Another question is coming from Alexander, who is part of this group, but he's not from Belgrade, so he's following on Zoom. His question is, sorry, how can you tell when there's too much action and when too little action in a story, and how do you level it proportionally?
Well, in the video game industry, this is a very specific industry where there is a lot of QA testing, even though in the movie industry, you cannot do what you do in the video game industry, which is you make an alpha of your game and you tell people to test it. So actually you cannot know it unless you are very experienced. You must test your game with in alpha, in early release, with a lot of people, and they will tell you there are too much action, there are not enough action.
Okay, thanks. Another question is, how hard would it be to add additional branches when you already added story to the current branching structure? Is there any limit to how much additional branches would be too much and when to stop?
This is an innocent question, but this is a actually very strong question, because actually people want to be good. People want to do good action in the game because they are not very good inside them, but they think that if they do good things, they will have more rewards, because this is how games work since the beginning of the first game. And one of good example is The Witcher 3, because in this game you have a lot of choices, but they do not appear as there is no choice that appears better than another one. So you can add as many branches as you want in your structure, but they have to be equally good branches, equally interesting branches. If you do branches that is very appealing to players and another one which is not exciting or is not good, people won't take it, and you will lose money and time by adding these branches. So the balance between the attractiveness of the branches must be is the real question, actually.
Okay, thanks a lot. So I will also turn to the room and see if we maybe have some questions here.
How big can those maps, those branching maps get?
Did you hear the
Not really,
question?
actually.
How big can the branching maps, how big can they get?
They can be as big as possible. For instance, in Detroit Become Human, they actually use the vastness and the multitude of the branching as a marketing point. But actually, it makes no sense, because right now I am working on the procedural branching. That means that you can generate adventure. You can generate branching by with mathematics, for instance. So the number of the branches after if you have a great number of branches, that doesn't mean that you will have a great experience. And if you have you can take the money you all the time you will invest in all these additional branches if you have too many branches, and maybe invest them into better artwork or better sounds, or I don't know, marketing, or even enjoy yourself, because sometimes this is a better investment.
Okay, thanks.
It's great that we came to investing of the time. So my question will be, what do you think about the illusion of the choice? So we can make some kind of decision, but there's no actual branching.
I'm sorry, you will have to repeat the question, because I didn't hear the word.
We will repeat it from a closer distance.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I wanted to ask, what do you think about illusion of branching? Actually, illusion of choice. Player can make a choice, but it will go one direction. Not depending on
okay, this is a very good question. Illusion of choice is a good thing. Is a good thing, even if you don't think it's a good thing, for two reasons. First, people want interactivity. They want to press button. They want to make choices. Even if their choices are fake choices, they want to make it. So if you are playing a Mass Effect game, BioWare game, and you have the Commander Shepard that goes on the ship and say, you have to choose between being nice or being mean, and the crew will answer with the same thing, you have the illusion of choice. But the illusion of choice is good because the player will have made a choice, and this is good. As long as the player smash a button, we are in the right way. This is the first thing. And the second thing, the illusion of choice is something that the player can understand and feel. He can feel cheated, but he can feel cheated only if he knows he has been cheated. And he can know that only if he goes back to the beginning of the game and replay the game. And actually, people don't replay game. There are too many games, so people enjoy your game. He has a nice time, and then he go to another game. So he won't feel cheated. So illusion of choice is a very good way to make an interactive game. You don't have to make all your game an illusion of choice, but if instead of having I don't know, a 30-second dialogue where the player doesn't mash button, it's good to have some illusion of choices.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just one after the show.
Okay, we have another one.
How often you fit pre-existing stories you made or someone else's pre-existing stories into some of the branching alternatives, right? On the other side, there's a style that you start from ground zero, right? And you write your own story from zero, from scratch, into some of the branches you decide in the beginning. What portion of the passage you usually take?
Okay, I didn't get the question right. You mean how do I take a regular story and make it interactive? Is right?
Yeah. How often do you do that, or how often do you make it from scratch into some of the?
In my regular job, I usually work from scratch because this has been my job for 22 years now. So I don't have. I have that in my blood, so I do that naturally. But all these methods, I actually use right now. I use the geographical method because I have to give a scenario by the next Wednesday, and I have like zero asset done right now, and I will work this weekend on it, and I will use the geographical methods. I have the maps just there, and I took this is a real life example. So I took the city map, Google Maps of Varanasi, which is Benares in French, which is a city in India. And I thought, okay, there is a big river called the Gange, and I took everything, and then I designed the branching narrative on this because I have no time. This is a way to work very in very stretch of time, in very short stretch of time.
Yeah, I understand. The question was, this is why actually I asked the question. Character development in linear stories.
Actually, you are too far from the screen. I don't hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Character development in linear stories is already set, and it's perfect as it can be, right? But if you start from scratch and write an interactive story from scratch, right? You have to think about that. Think actually about character development in the branch you want to do it. Yes. How hard is to fit pre-existing character who is developed in some pre-existing story into some of the branches branch examples you show?
Yeah, I understand the question, and this is a difficult question. You have to anticipate. Actually, you have to work on the two levels. You have to work. What I do is I try to imagine what will be the best experience of the player, and this experience will be the main story. then I will add some branches on the sides. But this is how I will do that. But this is, you have to understand that when it comes to video game industry, you work the opposite way of the standard industry, because in the standard industry you have you say that if you work for a TV series or a movies, you will take this guy and say, okay, this is a knight, he's very, very good, he's very strong, and there is a dragon, so logically the knight will slay the dragon. But in the video game industry, you will say this guy is a hero and the player can do anything with it. There is a dragon. What you will do, player? And if the player say, "Oh, I will slay the dragon," then the character development will be that the player will become good and strong. But the player, since we are in interactive fiction, you say, "I don't want to slay the dragon. I like that the dragon destroyed the country." So the character development of the player will that be the hero is an evil guy. So you see that the character development must not be set before you write your game.
I understand. Like you have to think about the perfect path through the game when you think about the character development too. And the final question is, what do you think about those kinds of meta games which have the recurring branch? Like it's a Groundhog Day, but when you complete one circle, you learn something, and the next circle you complete, you feel it differently. You have a bigger understanding of the every next circle you complete, and that's actually how the story in its whole completes. Every time you get to know something new, something greater.
So what about these games?
What do you think about them? Is that kind of the meta take?
Yes.
And solution for that meta game.
Actually, the roguelites didn't came into the video game industry because it's a fun way to tell stories. It came to the industry. The industry is wants to make money. Roguelites can cut 40 hours games experience into 40 1-hour experience. And we want that because players want that, so we will have sell. If roguelites can allow microtransaction, for instance, and then earning more money. So roguelites are popular because they are making more money. Point and click in the 90s were very popular because there were strong experiences in a world there was no internet, so there was no walkthrough available. So the popularity of the roguelike into the video game industry and into the narrative video game industry is not something that is linked to an optimal use of the branching narrative.
Yeah, thanks. Cool, I understand. So
thank you.
Okay. Okay, it seems we are out of questions for today. So thanks once again for sharing your time and your thoughts with us. So in regards to the homework, we'll share it with the crew, and then maybe just for your information, we'll send you back the results so you can have a look.
Yeah, and you can share my email if they want to ask some question more.
Of course.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we'll catch up in the next occasion, hopefully.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Zamolio bih sada sve učesnike Playing Narrativesa koji su uključeni preko Zooma da ako mogu da ostanu na pozivu, a ostaloj publici se naravno zahvaljujemo što ste nam se pridružili i nastavite pratite SGA kanale, imat ćemo još par prilično zanimljivih programa ovog meseca i naravno sve do leta, tako da hvala vam na pažnji.